Books, books. I like books. I'm gonna read them all. Hi readers, Chris here. Welcome to my channel where I review fantasy, Stephen King, all sorts of books. And today I'm going to be doing my review of Stephen King's Desperation. Before I jump in, I do just want to acknowledge last week was a rough week. I'm not going to get into it here, but I did just want to say thank you to everyone who watched, commented, liked on my PAX video, and thank you to everyone who sent kind words, liked my post about Jack. I'll probably talk about that more a little bit when I'm ready, but for now, today, I want to focus on Stephen King, Desperation. I am so behind on reviews, so be on the lookout for a lot of reviews coming up soon, if I can get to them. As per usual, I'm going to talk about world building, characters, and plot, but first, if you're not familiar with this story at all, Desperation takes place in this kind of deserted area of Nevada. There is this highway that's kind of empty, and there is a family traveling down the freeway, and they mysteriously get pulled over by this cop. And long story short, this cop turns out to be not a normal cop. He's an evil cop, and he takes the family back to this deserted town called Desperation. And it turns out that anyone that kind of drives down this road gets pulled over by this cop, gets taken to this town, gets locked up, and then things escalate from there. That's like a real basic setup, but that's pretty much all you need to know going into this book. So let's talk about the world building. And this is definitely one of the things that I liked about this book. I like this about most of Stephen King's books. He just does such a good job of really bringing that creepy factor to life. And this book in particular, some of his books are more creepy than others, and this one definitely has the creep factor. The whole thing with the police officer, that's just, you can tell he's just not quite right. He's not outwardly evil. He's not like a demon. He seems like a normal person that just has a few very subtle ticks that there's just something wrong with him. There's just something wrong. And then when you get to the actual town of Desperation, again, he has so many little details, and even, this is not a spoiler because it's in the flap of the book here, but it even says that, this town had a dead animal nailed to a road sign. There's a lot of stuff going on here. There's some creepy animals, a discarded baby doll. I mean, there's just all these little details that really set up that this is a creepy town and that there is something wrong there. Not just that it's creepy, but it's beyond creepy. It's creepy and there is something wrong with this town. Again, these are all things that King does really, really well and things that I really enjoyed. So in the beginning of this book, I was very much ooh, here we go. This is going to be a creepy thrill ride. So now let me move on and talk a little bit about the characters. I'm actually going to start with the cop, Collie, and Tragian. So like I mentioned, in the beginning of the story, when we first meet him, he pulls over this family on the side of the road, and he seems like a normal cop. But as the interaction goes on, weird things start to happen. He starts to say weird things and do weird things. And by the time he's taking the family back to the jail in the town, that something is definitely off. But it doesn't end there. Because there are other people that travel down the road too, and there are other people that start to interact with this cop, with Collie. And every interaction that he has, they progressively get worse and worse. They progressively get worse and worse to the point where, that there is something not right going on. And when he shows up that, poop's gonna hit the fan because something crazy is going on. So I found his character really fun. The whole creepy cop I thought was really fun. Again, really had that creepiness factor, so I really, really liked that. As for the family that we meet in the beginning, I'd say like the best character out of that group is probably the son, David. So David's a young boy, and David is kind of the one person like in this whole 800-page story that like instantly knows that there's something wrong, that there's something going on, and he's kind of the one that figures out like how to help everyone, if that makes sense. I don't want to go into spoiler details here, but let's just say the kid has a special gift and he sees things or senses things that the adults don't. So he's really the one that like everyone starts to rely on to try to get them out of this crazy situation that they're in. If you've ever read The Shining, David Carver very much reminds me a bit of Danny in The Shining. So Danny had this special ability that they called the Shine, where he could, sense things. He had a bit of precognition, etc., etc. I don't think it goes that far in the book, but there's definitely something like special about David, you could say, and there's definitely like a reason why he's the one that kind of helps the rest of the adults figure out like what's going on, how to get out of it, how to defeat it, like and what happens throughout the course of the story. The other thing I will say is that if you've read all of Stephen King's books up until this one, there are some characters in here that will be familiar. I mean, one in particular, but there's more than one if you are closely paying attention. I will say though, other than the cop, the creepy cop, and then David, I didn't really connect that deeply with any of the other characters. And there are a number of them. I didn't connect with a number of the characters. I'm not sure why, because in general, I typically really love Stephen King characters. I don't know, for some reason the ones in here, other than the ones I mentioned, I don't know, I didn't connect with that much. I wish I could say why, but I cannot figure out how to articulate that. So I'll say I'm kind of like even split on characters, because there's some I liked, but there was some that I was just kind of like, meh. I don't know why. The only thing I will say, the only thing I can think of off the top of my head is I feel like a lot of these characters didn't feel unique or different. I feel like they're the same characters that we've seen in a lot of Stephen King books before, so maybe that's why. I don't know. I am just making it up as I go along. And now I'm going to talk about the plot, and this is where I struggled a bit. The first half of this book, I absolutely loved. I loved everything that happened in the creepy town. Like I said, I loved all the interactions with the cop. I loved how this kind of random group of people came together. That's like another Stephen King trope that he uses a lot, like random people forming a team. I loved all that. However, about halfway through, the story takes a turn off into like really deep supernatural territory. And again, this is something that King does a lot. And it's not that I didn't expect it. I did. It's just, I don't know. I felt like the way that he wove the supernatural elements into the story just they didn't connect with me. I didn't like it. I thought it was a bit convoluted. I don't know how much I can say about it without getting into spoiler territory, but basically this town, the abandoned town, is like an old mining town, and there's this mine there, and then when people were like digging there, they uncovered this evil force. So it's basically one of those like nameless, faceless, like evil force type stories, like an evil force that doesn't really have a form, a physical form, if you will. So but again, I feel like King's already done that before. He's done that in It, where its true form is kind of doesn't really have a form, so that's why he takes the form of Pennywise the clown. Maybe that's the thing. Everything in here, or a lot of things in here, I feel like King has done before. So the story didn't feel very new. It didn't feel very fresh. Again, there were things that I liked about it. I liked the first half of the book. I loved a lot of the character work in the first half. I liked the plot in the first half. I liked the world building in the first half. It's just the back half of the book just lost me. So overall, I'm kind of meh on this one. And again, I do think it's a case of this book is way too long. It's over 800 pages, and honestly, it could have been about 400 pages. If this book was about 400 pages, I probably would have loved it, but I thought it was way too long, way too convoluted, needs a little bit of editing. I'm still a big Stephen King fan. Like, not all the books can be winners. I still have my favorites. This, unfortunately, is just not one of them. But to be clear, I didn't hate it. I just have some issues with it. That is all for me today. So now Swiper and I want to know, have you read Desperation? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Did you have any issues with it? Is it your favorite Stephen King book of all time? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments section below. And as always, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're not already, please subscribe to my channel for more bookish stuff and more furry friends coming soon. Thank you, Swiper. All right, everyone. Happy reading.